What's up? It's Nick Davenport, aka Mr. Mental Muscle here, and I'm going to do a review of a video that's going crazy on the internet right now and on TV, CNN, whatnot, about President Trump bragging on his cognitive test scores, like a kid who just got a gold star on his report card. And I honestly, I'm neutral. I'm not for him, not against him. I'm reporting this as a scientist who knows this stuff. So just check out what I got to say. I'm going to look at it. This is my first time watching this interview. My parents told me about it actually, and they thought I would like it, and I'm interested to see what happens. So I'm gonna react to it and give my expertise of what I know personally and how it may apply. See if he's legit. Maybe he is. I don't know. I'll go on this neutrally. Maybe he's full of it. But let's take a look and see and check it out.
White House physicians monitor everything about a president, including his cognitive ability. Most presidents don't talk about that, of course. But this president was happy to, in great detail, when asked by our Dr. Siegel. Watch.
Presidential health, or health of a candidate, is going to be on the table, of course, as it always is. And I've been someone always asking for that. I've seen a lot about your health, being in good health. What do you think should come out or be the attention regarding Vice President Biden?
Well, I think we have to be in good health. I'll tell you what, this is a very important job, to put it mildly. There's nothing like it, and I will also...
I'll stop there. So he says it should be, mental health is a very important job. It's true, and I agree, because you're talking about someone who's going to run the country, and crazy that presidents typically on average are over 65 years old when they run. Youngest president was Theodore Roosevelt. He was 42. Kennedy was 43. But basically, it's a good suggestion. I feel that presidents should have this thing to be thought about, because at the end of the day, they're running the country, and as you get older, there's decline. So I'm for it.
Also say, and I think I've had to work harder than others, because I've been attacked from fronts that nobody ever got attacked on, with fake investigations, fake Russia, Ukraine. I mean, nobody's gone through, and yet I've done more than any president in the first 3 years in history. There's no president that's done what we've done.
That may be somewhat subjective. I know there's ways to measure, but who can say he's done better? This is kind of him just talking about himself, I guess.
With rebuilding the military, the judges, we'll be up to almost 300 judges, including 2 great Supreme Court judges, at the end of this term. So it's really something that's been great, but you need stamina, you need physical health, and you need mental health. And because you have so much fake news, every once in a while you'd say, first they'd say, he wants to take over the world, he's going to take over the world, he's a dictator. The next day they'll say, he's crazy. The next day they'll say, oh, he's incompetent. The next day they'll say something. So the last time I was at the hospital, probably a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I asked the doctor, I said, is there some kind of a cognitive test that I could take?
I'm going to stop it there. So cognitive test. This is misleading. Let's not even get political. When you say cognitive test, you got to ask what type of cognition or cognitive skills are we testing, because there's different executive functions we can work with, like working memory, pattern recognition, cognitive flexibility. So we got to get specific on what type of test we're going to take, because if we just say let's take a cognitive test, there's hundreds we could choose from, and that's the beauty. You can cherry pick ones that are less strenuous than others, or emphasize a skill he's actually good at cognitively and excel. So what kind of test are you taking is a question I would want to ask.
Because I've been hearing about it, because I want to shut these people up. They're fake news. They make up stories. I mean, like, I'll do an interview with you. I didn't say you can't ask me about this. I say ask me anything. I did one with Chris Wallace. He was nice enough to say, he said, I just want to tell the audience there was no question that's off bounds. Okay, and he's a tough cookie, and it was a good interview. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And it was good. But I didn't say you can only ask this, you can only... We have to be sharp. If you're in the office of the presidency, we have to be sharp. So they were saying all these different things. It was going all over. Whichever stuck. None of it stuck, fortunately. But one of the reasons it didn't is that I took a test. I said to the doctor, it was Dr. Ronnie Jackson, I said, is there some kind of a test? An acuity test. And he said there actually is, and he named it, whatever it might be.
I find it troubling he doesn't name the test, because if he said the name of the test, I would quickly know if it's, not only is it valid, relevant, official, because there's so many tests that aren't official that are floating around there, and all because he's a doctor, that's using the title to kind of like give like clout to him being efficient, because a doctor of what? Is he a psychiatrist? Is he a cognitive psychologist? Like, these are people I would want to hear the test being come from. He's a medical doctor. He can have access to these tests, but it doesn't mean they're valid or even relative to what he's trying to do.
And it was 30 or 35 questions. The first questions are very easy. The last questions are much more difficult. Like a memory question, it's like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman.
So just hearing this seems like a working memory type test, because he's asking to remember a list of items, and he's probably going to be asked to recall them at a later point. So that's working memory, the ability to hold information and manipulate it and use it for later usage. So that's what it's sounding like right now. And he says easier to harder. That's very subjective. Most tests is not really about harder or easier. It's about where you fall on the spectrum. But let's see where this goes.
Man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good. If you get it in order, you get extra points. Okay, now he's asking you other questions. Other questions.
So he says if you get it in order, you get extra points. I'm not sure what he means by that, but if I'm using my senses right, I guess he's referring to like the weight of the question may be predicated on the order, but a lot of times with cognitive tests, it's all or nothing, because if you don't recall all of them in order, you don't get the question at all. So I'm not sure what test this is, but I'm not familiar with them being subjective to which ones you get right. So it's kind of sounding kind of flimsy right now, but I don't know.
And then 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes later, they say, remember the first question? Not the first, but the 10th question? Give us that again. Can you do that again? And you go person, woman, man, camera, TV. If you get it in order, you get extra points. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy. And
so, yeah, it sounds like a memory test, working memory. You had to remember the items in order over a duration of time. So I won't say hard or easy. It's just challenging depending on what your deficits are, because if someone has good working memory, they're going to do fine at that test and maybe has good working memory. But for him to say, keep saying these extra points, get extra points, I'm not sure what that's referring to, because if a valid test, if it's scientifically valid, it's going to be objective. It's not going to be certain questions. It'll be weighted in a way that makes it relative, so it can be transferred over different populations or different demographics. So when it's subjective like that, there is a lot of subjective tests in psychology as a whole, but if he's trying to make this passable as a cognitive test on his cognitive acuity, he can't have all these extra variables he's talking about.
And that's not an easy question. In other words, they ask it to you, they give you 5 names and you have to repeat them, and that's okay. If you repeat them out of order, it's okay, but
He keeps saying easy, hard. What's easy, now it's hard. Honestly, 5 items is not that many items. The brain typically can hold about 7, so that's 2 below what we typically can hold. So if you can remember the 5, it's not saying it's easy or hard, but it's not that big of a deal, honestly.
But it's not as good. But then when you go back about 20, 25 minutes later and they say, go back to that question. They don't tell you this. Go back to that question and repeat them. Can you do it? And you go, person, woman, man, camera, TV.
He seems to really be stuck on this question. I guess he did very well at that specific question, because he's not talking about any other questions, so I don't know, but he really seems to like this question a lot because he keeps talking about it.
They say, that's amazing. How did you do that? I do it because I have like a good memory, because I'm cognitively there. Now,
once again, subjective terms. I'm a man of science. He's cognitively there based off of what? What is this test goal of measuring? And he may not know it, but there's obviously an objective to this test. And if he doesn't know it, I can't really extrapolate what he's saying for him to keep kind of bragging on how well he did at a test that seems very subjective, kind of. Even though it's a memory test, it seems like he's only emphasizing parts that he did well at.
Joe should take that test, because something's going on, and I say this with respect. I mean, it's going to probably happen to all of us, right? It's going to happen. But we can't take a chance of it happening. When you're dealing with Russia, and there's nobody been tougher to Russia than me.
Okay, it's getting a little political now, but he said Joe Biden should take the test, and I agree, depending on what it's measuring. Or they should take another test, both of them, that's less subjective, more objective, and has maybe a more array. And like I said, I don't know what this is specifically testing. It sounds like it may be something for like dementia or Alzheimer's or maybe TBI. And it's like, if you're given these types of tests, they won't be very relevant if you don't have those issues. So it's like saying if I'm a 100-meter sprinter in the professional in the Olympics or something, I'm not going to go jog a mile in a middle school. Test wasn't made for me. And I'm going to obviously excel at jogging a mile in middle school if I'm a 100-meter sprinter. Even though that's not my event, I'm more than in good shape to beat some middle schoolers, right?
Russia than me. Nobody been tougher than China than me. I can tell you right now, they would love to see Joe Biden instead of Trump. We've taken in billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars from China, which they never gave us anything. They had the worst year before the plague came in. They had the worst year just about in their history, 67 years. It was the worst year they had in 67 years before the plague. And we were doing great. We had the best economy. But we have to have somebody that's sharp. If this person isn't sharp, because I can tell you President Xi is sharp, President Putin is sharp, Erdogan is sharp. You don't have...
Once again, he's being subjective, like men of science. So if you make those claims, what measures have shown that they're sharp, quote unquote? Have they scored high on certain like standardized testings that's been used consistently and has a lot of research to back it? Because I could personally make a test with my drills, with MindBody1, and be like, oh, XYZ, Dustin Poirier, or Rashard Matthews, whoever I worked with, military people did good at it. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily valid. You know, it has to be some relevance to the test, has to be standards, and has to be objective.
Many non-sharp people that you're dealing with, and we can't have somebody that's not 100%. So what I did is when it's a public test, and he said, if you take this test, we may have to reveal it. I said, it's all right. I mean, is it tough? Tell me about it. I'd never heard of it. And I got a perfect mark. And the doctors they said very few people can do that. Very few people get that. You understand? It's not that easy. There were other questions tougher than what I just did. But it's not that easy.
This is another thing with psychological or cognitive tests. It should not be looked at as a finite thing, one or the other. That's more of a type theory. Look at it as a spectrum from higher end to lower end, because if you just look at it as a good or bad, pass or fail, there's not living any middle ground of how efficient you were in different parts. So he's making it seem like a pass or fail type thing, which most cognitive tests are not that.
That easy. But as soon as they announced my score and that test, all the stuff went away about me. Is he competent? Remember, they're talking about 25th Amendment and nonsense. And they said, wow. And even the enemies, they don't say that anymore. But they do say it about Joe Biden. And honestly, he should take the test. In a way, he has an obligation to, because you have to be able to show this country that the person that we're picking as leader is sharp, because we're dealing with people that want to do very bad things to us if they had the chance. And you have to be sharper than them. So in a certain way, Joe Biden has an obligation to take a test like that one or something else.
Well, I agree. I think every person should have the cognitive capacity to do this. But all honestly, I don't know. It seems like this test was very subjective in a sense, or he just made it seem as such, how he talked about it. Now, after looking at the video, my take on this, he did some type of cognitive test that involved like working memory, pattern recognition, cognitive flexibility, basically things that show is your prefrontal, your executive functioning, things that help us, solve problems, set goals, regulation, emotion, are those working correctly? And it seems like the test was more so geared towards people that may have some kind of ailment in the neck, like Alzheimer's or dementia, something like that maybe. So it may not have been geared specifically for more general usage, and there's hundreds of tests designed by researchers every day. I've even made some, so I'm not sure what he was aiming for, and I don't even know what that really proves, because in my experience, cognitive function has such a wide array of uses. So he may have aced it He may have, but the way he's bragging makes it seem like it's the end all be all, and no test is the end all be all. I personally think a personality assessment serves way more function for these type of things, because now it's showing what type of person he is, and this has correlations with cognitive ability. There are studies that show that people with working memory or high working memory ability are able to make better decisions under pressure. So combining two, and I actually work on certain things with Mind Body One. This is our goal to consult and create programming for these type of things. So maybe I can give Trump one of my assessments, and Biden, get both their minds right, see if they're competent, because I feel personality plays a big factor too, and that's something I know they're not testing for at all. This testing very basic, I feel, maybe geared towards specific like brain trauma or neurocognitive degenerative diseases. So who knows? But that's just my take on it. Guys like this video, let me know. I'll make more like this, and remember, get your mind right.